Welcome to Drummer Nation, the show for and about drummers, where we talk about all things related to drums and drumming. We have a great show for you today with a wonderful artist. But before that, let me introduce you to my talented co-host, partner in crime, Adam Nussbaum. There he
Hey,
is.
team. Nice to see everybody and nice to be seen.
And not
Or
viewed.
absolutely. I was just going to say that. Better to be seen than viewed. I was at 2 wakes this weekend, so I've had it with that.
I'm sorry to hear that. Yeah. Well, we have a little different show today. You know, we talk to a lot of drummers, but we also try to get real musicians on every now and then. That's a drummer joke, okay? How many musicians in the band? 7 and a drummer, you know, that kind of thing. Anyway, we have a bassist extraordinaire, a legendary bassist. I'm happy to say has been my friend for decades, and his name is John Clayton. Welcome to the show, John.
Thank you. Good to be here. I was starting to get a little intimidated with your intro and all things drumming and da da da. I thought, man, am I in the right place?
You're in the right place. Let me, if you're not familiar with the legendary John Clayton, bassist, composer, arranger, band leader, educator, Grammy winner. You know, the thing I have to ask you about first is you're a longtime resident of Alta Dena, which has been basically destroyed. And sadly, you lost your house in there, didn't you?
Yeah, we did. We lost the house. I lost the instruments, the music, lifetime of music, all the stuff that I'd written and worked on, all my recordings, albums, CDs, the whole bit. Sad. I mean, really sad. It's stuff you never would imagine would happen. And now we're kind of redefining what normal is, and thanks to friends, family, we're finding our way. And just an hour ago, the car that I've had on order for a month came, so we're hoping to have it in hand by tomorrow at least. You know, so it's like all this stuff one step at a time. I have an instrument. I'm glad of that. Found a bass that I really do love. I was just telling Hammer. I was talking to Hammer about an hour ago, Jeff Hamilton, and told him, I said, well, I'm really anxious for you to hear this bass and see what it sounds like with you. And got to do the same thing with you, Adam. And I hope that you're still playing, Mike.
Oh yeah. I lead a trio twice a month at a.
Okay.
I can't get enough people to come here because it's a cigar bar.
Yeah, I'll phone in my part.
Even some musicians will go, rather not do it. Anyway, let's talk about you. Back up a little bit. You were on the road when this happened, right?
Yeah. So I'm sorry, I cut myself off. I was in New York, and my wife and I were at the hotel just before leaving in the afternoon for the award ceremony. I got a call from my daughter, who was in tears and hysterical, saying we lost everything, and their house had burned down. And she's married, and we have two beautiful grandkids. So they lost everything. Everybody had evacuated, so that's the good news. And we're so stricken with by that news from her, and then, you know, basically had to hang up and then go to the awards thing. And so I couldn't bring it down with all the sorrows of my daughter losing her house. So we went through that, and it was a really, you know, uplifting event. I was honored. I was humbled to be honored that way. Anyway, so we go back to the hotel to clean up before going to the next event, which was a tribute to Russell Malone.
Who had just passed.
It was a tribute to his memory. So we're there in the hotel room. We get another call from a friend of ours who lived in Pasadena, and he had been texted by Gina, who said, if it's safe, would you mind going up and seeing how my parents' house fared? So he basically called us, could hardly get the words out through his tears, but he basically said, you lost everything. So, you know, it was like a double whammy within hours. Then, after trying to digest that, had to, you know, get it together, go back to the event and do the Russell Malone thing. And now I'm seeing more musicians now. So Ron Carter was there, Christian McBride, Benny Green, just on and on. All these people backstage hugging and smiling and laughing. I didn't want to bring anybody down, so I didn't. But Christian McBride hugged me and said, "Man, good to see you." Da, da, da. And he said, "By the way, how are you guys doing with those fires out there?" And I just said, I just found out we lost everything," and he crumbled. And so he was the first guy that I told, and he kept the lid on it. And but everybody, man, it's just so amazing, you guys, that the support that I've gotten, that we've gotten. It's when I'm in tears, it's because of somebody coming to me or sending an email or a call and saying, "What can I do for you? Anything you need, let me know." And that's just so beautifully overwhelming. Um, um, so yeah, I just
Well, that part doesn't surprise me, John. You're a beloved figure in the industry and been so kind to so many people over the years that I'm not surprised everybody would rally to your assistance.
Yeah, thank you. But I don't take anything for granted, and I'm always flattered whenever people extend themselves. But
Well,
thank you.
aside from your house and cars and that of your family, you lost your bass, right?
I did. In fact, I lost both basses. The bass that you knew, and you and Adam knew from years and years and years ago, that went up in flames. Also, the after Ray Brown passed, his widow was like a mom to me. Called and said, "Listen, I've got Pops's bass if you want to buy it." And so after a couple of years, I finally had the nerve, emotional nerve, if you will, to go ahead and buy it. So, and I got to tell you, I went through some mental anguish, understanding that bass that had played with
Everybody.
Oscar Peterson, Ella Fitzgerald, Duke, Basie, Freddie Hubbard, all these people, Quincy Jones, that bass was gone. I was the last one to have it, and so, and part of me is, hey, it wasn't your fault, but another part of me says, well, you do understand that the world will not hear that instrument again. It was last in your hands. So, I had to do some mental whatever.
I know what you mean. Even though it's not your fault, you
I
couldn't
do,
do anything about it. But I
yeah.
hear you. You feel that. Yeah.
So that was kind of a weird realization.
Well, I feel it, and I'm not even a bass player.
Yeah.
Just Ray Brown's bass. Oh my God.
And also Milt Hinton's bow, the bow that was made for, the International Society of Bassists sent me this bow and said, we'd like for it to live in the hands of various bass players.
Right.
We want you to be the first guy to hang on to it before you, pass it on to somebody else after how long, and so that's gone too. So but I got to tell you guys, the stuff that I lost only helps clarify what I need to go forward. So as soon as I have this thought of like, oh yeah, I don't have that. Okay, all right, sad, but okay, what do I need to keep moving? And it helps really define what that is.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a whole, man, it's a thought process most of us, thank God, don't have to go through, but it is a thought process that one does deal with if you have to deal with
and a grieving process. I know you lost a brother too, and those are big emotional hits that take some time to get over.
Yeah.
Now you did a GoFundMe campaign, right?
We got, what, Jeff Hamilton, my dear brother, he called and said, man, look, and he was at my doorstep immediately and just said, what can I do? And at some point he said, look, people are coming to me and asking about you and making sure you're okay and all that. And he said, if you want, I can start a GoFundMe. And I said, man, I don't know, because
You didn't want to take charity. I know.
yeah, and also feels like we got insurance. We're going to be okay with the basic stuff. And he said, okay, no pressure. Just want you to know. And then my manager, Gail Boyd, she said the same thing. People are asking of what they can do to help you. And do you sure you don't want to think about the GoFundMe? I said, Gail, I don't know. And she said, you know what? I think you honestly need to allow them the chance to come forward and help you. Not only would it help you, but it would help them.
Helps
And
them.
that's something I can't presuppose. I can't put that frame on it. I'm not in that position.
But in your heart, when you help somebody, you feel great about it.
And I realized that. So anyway, I told Gail and I told Hammer, listen, if you don't mind, sure, go ahead, run with it. And he did. And I think within the first hour, it's like $8,000 was raised. And at the end, it's close to 400,000, which,
Beautiful.
so my wife and our family are just so grateful, so overwhelmed. And I look at my wife and I said, well, actually, this really will help, because there's a lot of stuff that the insurance would not cover that I kind of need, and I have to find a way of getting it, regardless of insurance money or not.
And that would include instruments? Are they insured?
Actually, the instruments were insured.
Well, that's good. Music, though.
The music, yeah, the music and life stuff,
Yeah. You can't replace all the photographs, all the memories, all the things in your home, children's toys, whatever it is.
Well, the memories, it's interesting you say that, because the stuff was kind of a memory trigger, if you will. I had a classical teacher named Abe Luboff, and one of the books that I worked out of, he wrote in Sharpie, which was not even called Sharpie back then. He wrote long tones, ! And he's long since gone, but when I looked at that book, I would kind of laugh, and it would bring back, it would be inspiring, frankly. It would inspire me musically, some kind of, maybe not to play long tones, but somehow.
I know, that's what I meant by memory. You still have the memory, but the keepsakes.
Exactly. But the thing is, the memory is not going anywhere. And looking at that book with long tones on it triggered the memory.
Right.
So the memory is there. Looking at the pictures of Gina and Gerald when they were 2 and 3 year old, that would trigger the memory of, oh yeah, that was such a cool time.
Of course.
The memory's not going anywhere. Right. But I don't have the triggers anymore.
Well, this is a weak analogy, but when I was a kid in 7th grade, I took drum lessons from my band director, and there was a snare drum piece called The Downfall of Paris that has been played forever. Adam knows it. And it had me confounded. And he wrote on, it's a mimeograph page, and he crossed out Paris and he wrote Vossbein, The Downfall of Vossbein. And I still have it. I love it.
There you go.
That's a little insignificant nothing that means a lot to me.
Exactly. So all that to say, these are sort of this is my world now. Those are a bunch of the components in it. But man, I love life. I feel like the luckiest guy on the planet, man. I didn't lose any of my family. My friends have resurfaced. It's like, sheesh, this is kind of a new beginning in many ways.
Makes you realize how many people love you.
Yeah.
Things are things.
Yeah.
And, like you say, it's nice to have the trigger, but as we're all getting older and people are moving on, my take is, yeah, they've left the building. I get it. But what's in here is eternal. And, the spirits stay very present. And amen for that. I keep thinking of Bob Hope singing that song when I was a kid. I never thought of it. Thanks for the memories. I mean, amen, baby.
Yeah, I hear you, man.
Well, let's move on to go ahead, Adam.
I just think of the whole reality of like, we've been fortunate to have a certain amount of longevity in this journey. And, always being the kid, it's interesting now to be in the third of where things are at. And, I stop and I think, and it's like, I just have gratitude.
Yeah.
And amen, I'm basically healthy, at least physically. We know, but but my wife is cool, the kids are cool, the dog is cool, we
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Everything else in this world right now, outside of these your own personal tragedy, is pretty crazy too.
That's true.
But
Well, that's one thing music
I
can do for you, man. Focus you on
well,
something positive.
Yeah, for
it's
sure.
it's more cathartic now than ever to
Mhm.
make music with good people and to just feel that sense of community. And for me, I learned how to play by getting to play with great bass players. I didn't learn how to play with others by listening to drummers.
Mm-hmm.
It was like I learned about how to get the spittle a ding with the ickety boom. And I'm forever grateful to have had people along the way that had more experience than me and put up with my ineptitude and whatever I had that might have been happening or
Oh,
what.
God. Oh, I hear you.
But yeah, I have a very fond memory. We were out in Colorado once at one of those summer workshops, and you and Milt Hinton were together and you were talking and you were like on a little panel and the stories coming from you too, and he was so sharp, and it
Yeah.
was just so sweet to just see this his memory and just the joyful exuberance of this guy. And these people, they touch you. And those are gifts that are fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah. I
I,
hear you.
I have a personal story like that with John. I don't know if you remember that I brought my tubs over to your house one day and we did a music lesson.
Mm.
Your children were little. I remember them picking up toys on the floor in the living room. And I brought my tubs over and we played together and recorded it and talked about it. And it was very helpful to me, man. It was a music lesson with a great bass player. So I would suggest to any drummers, if you can get with a great bass player like that, more
Yeah.
power to you. It's a great
And
idea.
and the other
And
way
vice
around.
versa. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Bass players, man. Any bass player, seek out those drummers. We're the only two people in the band. If you're playing a swinging tune, they have to play every quarter note together. Everybody else has got freedom, not us. We got to be like that. And the cool thing is that that music reflects what we do as people. And I've known both of you guys for so long, and even if I don't talk to you on a regular basis, the moment I talk to you, it's like where we were 2 minutes ago,
Yeah, yeah.
in our conversation. So
Well, going back to that, I met you at Jeff Hamilton's house. Every now and then, he would get 5 or 6 of his students together, and instead of having a drum lesson individual, we would have a group lesson where he would bring in a bass player and a piano player. And many times, John was the bass player, and there was a young woman who, played pretty good piano, but we didn't even know she could sing. And it is Diana Krall.
yeah,
So that was some man. Those
yeah,
were some great days, and I'm still pals with a lot of those guys.
yeah. I tell students that it's never about networking. Networking doesn't work for us because if you try to network somebody, you're not going to play with them. You're not going to have a relation. It really is about relationship building.
Mm-hmm.
And they call it networking. Let them call it what they want. But if we try to network somebody to let them be a stepping stone to our career, that nothing's going to happen. But if somebody wants to sincerely get to know, man, Adam, I got all your albums. I love how you play. It's just such a pleasure to meet you. I'm going to be in the front row of your next gig, and maybe I can take you to lunch one day and just kind of talk to you. And then Adam's going to go, sure, yeah, come on. But if
Absolutely.
you feel for a second that somebody is like using you, networking you, trying to maneuver you, it's like, oh no, this feels dirty. And I think that's because what we do is so personal. You know, we're in the business of expressing ourselves. And so every note, every quarter note we play means something to us. It's not a textbook thing. It's not a business that allows you to manipulate people. And no,
Mhm.
I love that about what we do. Love
It's
it.
a
Yeah.
very intimate relationship.
Mm,
One of the most you can have, you know, as far as that relation of trying to get this thing and finding kumbaya and
mm.
that sense where, you know, we just feel good and it's like,
You're
cha, cha, cha.
you're sharing your souls
It
together,
is.
man. You know, you really are
Yeah,
sharing your souls on a
Yeah.
bandstand.
yeah. Amen for that too.
Well, speaking of bandstands, I remember when you started, you and Jeff, the Clayton-Hamilton Jazz Orchestra. I used to take money at the door for you at the Hyatt, the Riot Hyatt. You know that room downstairs. You guys
That
would
was
play.
our first gig, man. I talked them into doing it.
And how long has that been?
86, maybe 85,
Something like that. In mid '80s, yeah. And too bad nothing ever happened with it, man.
85.
That's one of the best big bands that have ever graced the glory of the world. And I think of it as a combination. All your writing, and I think of it, you know, you've got the Basie influence, Thad and Mel, Ellington, all the great writers I can hear in your writing. Were you? How did you become? When you started as a bass player, I know you knew Ray when you were a young man.
Yeah.
How did the writing come in?
You know, the writing started happening. I mean, as a kid, when I was playing bass, you know, just kind of messing around, I'd stumble on little whatever melodies or blues or who knows what, you know. But at some point, eh, um, well, it was when I was a Basie. So I finished IU, went on the road with Monty, Alexander, and Jeff for 2 years. Left that and joined Basie, and I knew how to transpose for instruments, but I'd never taken any writing lessons or anything like that. And at some point, I, and we, you know, I'm on the band, we're backstage. The manager says, "Hey guys, we're on. Let's get on stage right now." We hurry on stage. The curtain goes up. Ladies and gentlemen, the Count Basie Orchestra. I'd left my music backstage. That's when I realized I had memorized the book. So I basically didn't open the book unless it was something new. And I got more into listening to all the sounds that, you know, getting goosebumps. And so I asked Mr. Basie, "Is it okay if I write something for the band?" He said, "Yeah, sure." So I didn't know what I was doing, but I had some idea. So I wrote something for the band. It was the worst. It was embarrassing. It stunk so bad. The guys were like, "Hey, all right, man." Yeah, I knew it sucked. So but I was a little disappointed, but not discouraged. And on my first break, I went and because we played Splanky every night with that Killing
Mhm.
Shot chorus, you know, and I get goosebumps when we get there. So I just basically took that track on a break and wrote it out. I wrote it out in words, Roman numeral one. Actually, before that, I wrote exciting, blues, just words to exemplify what it was about. Then I wrote Roman numeral one, 8-bar intro, left-hand piano on 2 and 4, A flats, you know, Roman numeral two, melody, trumpets and trombones in unison, mutes, buckets, question mark, cups, I didn't know what the mutes were, but I could hear. Roman numeral 3, melody again, saxes play chords in the holes. You know, wrote the whole thing out in words like that. Then I went back and I tried to write as many of the notes, the actual notes that I could hear on manuscript paper, and basically put together this thing that transcribe a transcription of the tune. And I used that as a model for writing my own tune.
Taught
So
yourself is what you did.
I taught myself. Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
Was
I
that
did.
Blues for Stephanie that came
That
out
was
of that?
blues for Stephanie. I brought it in the band. Good guess.
Well, it's
The
a
band-
staple at Basie Band, and as well it should be. And that was your first real arrangement after the aborted, I mean, the first try that wasn't so
Yeah,
hot?
yeah, that was
Wow.
it. And so we ended up playing it every night and recording it and all that stuff. So that's how I got started. The guys in the band were they were the best teachers anybody could wish for. I'd write something and I'd be frustrated and racing, and then, hey man, what you doing? Oh, it didn't sound good, so I'm just trying to fix it here on the score, man. Well, don't do that. Just write another one, and the stuff you didn't like in the old one, don't put that in the new one. And that was like so logical, but they kept me writing, and they would, if I wanted to write a sax solo for the first time, I'd do like 8 bars of sax, and the whole sax section would come to my hotel room and play my 8 bars.
Oh man.
Oh, it was like that. And the brass section would hang around afterwards after a sound check just to play 6 bars of a brass chorale. That was really the vibe. So that's how I got started.
That's great. You also got to hear it with real musicians and
Yeah, really
great
great.
musicians. Yeah. Well, I know there's an arrangement you're really famous for. Most people would know, but the Whitney Houston arrangement of the Star Spangled Banner that she did at the Super Bowl is kind of widely regarded as the best arrangement of that and the best performance of that anybody's ever seen. And that's your arrangement.
Yeah.
How'd that come about?
Well, you know,
Fantastic, by the way.
well, thank you. A bass player friend of mine, Ricky Minor, was her musical director at the time, and called and said, "Hey, we got this gig for the Super Bowl. Want to know if we'd love for you to do your arrangements for the symphony orchestra." And I said, "Sure, awesome." And he said, "Look, we want you to do your thing, whatever you want to do. The only thing is, can you do it in 4/4? And can you there's not going to be a rhythm section, so some kind of a groove." So I said, "Sure." So I just kind of set up a little, you know, rhythmic thing that the percussion did in the orchestra, and just wrote the arrangement. And Ricky said, "Yeah, unfortunately, the it's the Florida Symphony Orchestra, and they don't have enough money to fly you down. So I'll go down with the arrangement and work with the orchestra." And so I'm thinking, right, Super Bowl does not have enough money. Anyway, so he
Well,
went
you
down.
know, just to interrupt you, they don't pay the halftime performers at all.
Oh, I know that, but they have money.
Oh yeah, of course.
Like when you play the White House.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Anyway, I interrupted you. Go on with that.
So anyway, he went down, and I'm at home knowing that anytime I send music away and somebody, like if I send a chart to a band or whatever, it never works, because they can't look at those black dots on a piece of paper and get in your head. You can try, but you know, and I don't write generic music, so anyway. So I'm
Well, when
home.
you say you don't write generic music, you mean you're writing for those people in the band
I write
specifically,
for people
like
in,
Ellington did. Yeah.
yes, exactly. And even if somebody else is playing it, I have to have an idea of someone who has a sound.
Mhm.
I can't look at,
Sonics.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
because
that's
music
great.
is sound, right?
Yeah.
So I have to have sound anyway. So I sent the chart with Ricky. I'm at home in California, wondering how it's going, and I get the dreaded call on my answering machine. "Hello, Mr. Clayton. This is the Florida Symphony Orchestra. We played your version of the Star Spangled Banner, and we have some pregnant pause concerns. We're actually thinking about using the standard arrangement for that." So I'm rolling my eyes and going, "No." And I called Ricky and said, "Ricky, what happened?" And he said, "It's cool, man. They didn't understand it, but it sounds good. Don't worry about it. We're gonna do it." So anyway, that's how that kind of came to be. And then of course, Whitney, and it was during the Gulf War,
Right.
as you may not recall. So the feelings in the nation were very, very nationalistic, if you will, and just all the, and of course, Whitney sang amazingly. All those elements were coming together at the same time. and it just worked. So my wife and I are watching it in Alta Dena on our couch with, you know, little Gina and Gerald bouncing around, and we watched it, and then just tears running down our face, more tears of relief than anything else,
Mm.
because the whole process was so, you know, I'd never written anything like that. So I had to learn how to copyright it, because it was a public domain work, and register it with ASCAP or BMI and blah, blah, blah. It was the whole thing. And then, you know, find out later on that Arista Records decided to release it because the Super Bowl, they talked the Super Bowl into allowing them to buy it from them, and Super Bowl said, no, we're not interested. And so Arista Records said, how about if we buy it from you or whatever, and we'll donate all the proceeds to the war effort. And that's when Arista Records caved in. So then
But
I
those
hear
are your royalties they donating.
exactly. So since it's a PD,
Yeah.
I
Well, it's a
and
public
when,
domain.
yeah. So since I made the arrangement, that means that I am essentially the composer, since it's a public domain work. So I hear about it getting, you know, they're going to release and all this stuff. I call Ricky. He says, man, I just heard about that. You need to call the record label and make sure they hook you up with your royalties. And I said, great. I called them up.
Mm.
I said, hi, this is John Clayton. And he said, oh, yes, we were going to call you. Yeah. And he said, listen, we're going to send a contract out, and we're donating all of the money to the war effort. And I said, well, my wife and I would like to choose where we donate our money. And so if you can just send the standard royalties contract. He said, well, we're not going to do that. And I said, why not? I've got the copyright on it. He said, yeah. So what are you going to do? Sue me? So sue me.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I'd heard about these kind of conversations before, but now I was experiencing it. So
Yeah, you need $500,000 in about 10 years of your life.
yeah, well,
Music business, an oxymoron.
yeah, right, exactly.
Terrible.
I
Music.
remember.
So what happened? What
So,
happened, John?
yeah, right. Music give you the business. So what happened was, I called this guy who was helping me so much. His name is Jack Elliott, great writer and LA guy. And he had been advising me. And I said, this just happened. What do I do? He said, I know an industry lawyer. I'll call you back. I ended up talking to the industry lawyer, who said to me, look, because he called Arista Records, and he called me and said, listen, it really is your choice. It's your decision. But if you want my honest opinion, you probably should consider, you know, donating your royalty. And I went, really? He said, totally up to you. But so I swallowed hard, and basically that's what I called the guy back at Airsource and said, listen, I'm going to go along with this. Can I get my name on all the product? And I said, sure. So later on, I thought, did this lawyer screw me over? But, you know, I don't think he did. He was an okay guy. He saw this young guy in his 30s who had 2 small kids, a house they had just bought. I had a car that I had just bought. You know, all of my savings was down. I was at that point, we were living hand to mouth. I would do every gig that I did, $50 gig, was to feed my family. It was not an easy time. And frankly, if I was to go up against Arista Records, they'd have my house, they'd have my car. They can stay in court as long as they want. They're Arista Records. You know, I was a jazz musician with 2 little kids. So
Meanwhile, your attorney is going to charge you $150 every time he reads your email.
Bingo.
It
Bingo.
seemed
Been
like
through
it seemed like you took the path of least resistance.
Exactly. I'm okay. You know,
Yeah.
You know, it was.
You know, the reputation that this piece of music brought, to you was something great, So,
Yeah.
you look at what you got, not what you didn't get.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, man.
So I don't have any regrets that way. I mean, I feel sorry that it happened that way, but I don't really have any regrets because a lot, my soul is satisfied. Kids are grown, got grandkids now. It's, life is okay.
Let me ask you a question. Um, a lot of people don't know that you were involved with the Concertgebouw Orchestra in Holland. Besides just your jazz experience, how long were you there working with them?
Well, um, I'll tell you the whole story. I'm gonna try to make it brief, but so I moved to Holland to be with my then girlfriend, now wife.
Right.
Um, so I'm there, and I wanted to do more classical stuff along with the jazz. And I knew at that time Holland had 16 government subsidized orchestras, not to mention amateur orchestras. So I told a drummer friend of mine that I was hoping to do more like solo work with orchestras. And he said, "Man, I have friends in that world. I'll let you know if I hear anything." He called me back one day, excuse me, and he said, "I hear there's a solo position open in the Amsterdam Philharmonic Orchestra." And now solo position translates to principal. And I didn't mean principal. I meant like stand in front of the orchestra and play solo. So I took the information. I was already in the finals of another classical competition I was in. So I just added the audition materials of what I was practicing, and then they offered me the job. So up till then, the magic number in my career seemed to be 2, because I was with Monty Alexander for 2 years, with Basie for 2 years. I figured I'd be in Holland for 2 years, and then we'll figure out the next thing. But I ended up staying for 5 years. So Amsterdam at that time had 3 orchestras. They had the Concertgebouw Orchestra, they had the Amsterdam Philharmonic, which is my orchestra, and they had the Netherlands Chamber Orchestra. And all 3 of us played in the Concertgebouw building.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's how that all happened. And I loved it so much, I ended up staying 5 years.
But how rare is that?
And you got a wife out of it.
I did. Kids, the whole deal. It
You
was
done
worth,
good. You done good.
worth the money.
But how rare is that for a jazz musician to have a principal chair in a philharmonic? Winton, I know, has Grammys in classical and jazz. It's a pretty small club, though, right?
I yes, historically, but I do think it's changing.
It is changing for
Yeah.
sure. But I remember talking to Joe Wilder, the great trumpet player, and he had studied, and back at the time, 50, not 50, 60, 70 years ago, unfortunately, there was so much of a segregated situation with orchestras. And for a lot of players that wanted to pursue the classical thing, that wasn't even an option.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and if anything, Joe said, "Yeah, man, doing all that classical stuff, it didn't help my jazz playing."
Well, yeah, it's funny. I'll bet it did. He was so humble. What a sweet guy he was, right?
Absolutely. Beautiful
I,
guy, yeah.
and I'm sure you guys are the same way. You studied classical stuff and rudiments and the whole bit. And it's not just about the technique; it's about the music too. And so if I'm playing, when I was playing whatever it was, a Beethoven symphony or you name it, I'm playing. If I'm playing C, E, G, B flat, D, I'm looking at C9. Oh, it's probably going to resolve to an F, right? And my colleagues are probably just playing C, E, G, B flat, D, and not really thinking. But that was the jazz stuff that informed the classical. And if I'm playing, oh, hello. If I'm playing,
We like that.
you like that? Okay. If I'm playing a tricky bebop head, then thanks to the classical studies that I did, I now have some different fingering options. So it's like one informs the other.
Absolutely.
It's
And
amazing.
the thing is, when you're a jazz player, you're not married to paper. You're married to these.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it's like I've run into so many younger musicians that play fantastic classical and they go, "Oh, I can't play jazz at all." And I go, "Hey man, what if you just try to make a little variation of the melody?
There you go.
Just don't be afraid,
Yeah.
And it's like, I think of that acronym FEAR, false evidence appearing real.
Oh, I like that.
And, it's like, wait a minute, just relax, man. It's like, don't think, just
Yeah.
pay attention and relax,
Yeah. Yeah.
Let it
Yeah.
go. Yeah, let it go.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
well,
I
let's
mean,
talk about drummers. We haven't
yeah.
talked about drums and drumming yet. And this is a drum
Yeah.
show. Uh, you're on a bandstand with a drummer you don't know, you've never played with before. What is it you need or you're looking for? Or tell me about working with drummers.
Great. Yeah. What is a bass player? What do you listen for with a drummer when what do you want to have?
Okay, number one, top of the no surprise to you guys. Top of the list is groove. Whatever the groove is, I just want to latch onto that in hopes that they'll latch onto mine. As soon as I sense that we're latching on the groove, everything else is completely secondary.
And that transcends any style, right? Groove,
Absolutely.
whatever
Every
kind of music
style,
you're
any
playing.
style.
Absolutely.
Man, if it doesn't work between the drums and the bass, it's time to go home. The whole thing feels wrong.
Mhm.
And so, I, you guys have played with bass players that play ahead of the beat, in the middle of the beat, behind the beat. Doesn't matter, man. It's as long as it's grooving. Who cares who's doing what? Classic examples are things like Richard Davis and Mel. They swung so hard,
Mhm.
but sometimes I'm in a room with a bunch of musicians, and I'll say, "Okay, guys, I'm going to give you a 2-bar count off. I want everybody to clap on the downbeat of the 3rd bar." And when I do that, I go 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the whole room does. And I said, "You know what I just heard? I just heard brap. I didn't hear bing, which means that all of us human beings hear the beat a millisecond differently than the next guy.
It's
Does that mean
it's a
we can?
place, not necessarily a point.
I like that.
Adam's got a lot of
Yeah.
those.
Does that mean we can't play together?
Yeah.
Of course not. So,
Right.
yeah, so that's number one. Number two is I try to find out if I affect them. If my playing affects the drum, if I go bing gang 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 ba ding ding goon, if they go okay, got you bop 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 bop, then I go, oh, okay, so I am affecting them. We are to
Acknowledgement.
acknowledgement. Exactly.
Yeah.
They're acknowledging me, I'm acknowledging them. And the other things that I listen for are blend. When a drummer um, really blends his or her sound with mine, then I'm a happy guy. If they, because Hammer and we had the time as kids to really kind of explore that. Uh, so we'd be playing, just practicing together, and I'd walk toward the end of the fingerboard and get that kind of timbre. I'd walk, farther up and get that kind of a sound. And, he'd play at different points on the cymbal. He'd dig in more, he'd pull back. We just kept experimenting to find out what the effect was on our sound together. So I look for that. I look for that when somebody blends with their sound with my sound, or and this is not just drummers and bass. I mean, all the great players. My brother and Terrell Stafford, when they play together, I could hear them talk and say, Jeff would say, "Man, I'm going to put the bell of my sound in the bell of your horn," and Terrell would say, "No, no, no, man, you play the way you do. Let's do it the other way. I'll put my sound in your horn." They talk like that, and I thought, man, that's the way I think when I'm playing with people.
Mhm.
So that's another big thing.
Those are great answers.
Yeah, the other, it's just basically um, being sensitive being sensitive together. So
Yeah.
I always want to match intensity. sometimes the volume may not match. It's unnatural for the bass to be as loud as the drums when you guys are playing forte. You know, acoustically speaking, that's not natural. Now, I like to hear myself and I want to be in there, but if you suddenly do a subito piano and you're down to nothing and my volume's like that, you know, no, I'd rather lean more toward on this. And I know bass players don't always agree with me on this, but they didn't have the experiences that I've had with that whole thing. When I was in Basie's band, I did what all bass players do. You're playing with a big band, you turn up to like 4 or 5, so you can hear yourself, so the guys in the band can hear you. But Basie, man, you know, with their drastic sudden dynamic changes, you know, you know, down to nothing, right? I'm in the band, got my amp on 5, you know, suddenly, and the guys in the band never said anything to me, but I knew that I was destroying the dynamic. So I didn't turn my amplifier off, but I turned it way down. And sure enough, the trumpet said, "Hey, John, man, we don't hear you so good. Can you turn your," and I just I turn it, say, "How's that?" Play some open strings. "How's that?" "Yeah, man, that's better. Thank you." Yeah, you know, so little by little, they got used to a more acoustic volume as well. And nobody said, they didn't say, "Hey, it's better that way." Basie never said anything. Freddie Green never said, "Oh, Freddie Green didn't have an amplifier," you know. So I'm like, who am I?
Father Time.
Yeah, and how?
And
Wow.
Jeff told me he was the de facto straw boss of the rhythm section. Was Freddie Green.
Yeah,
Damn,
You
he
put it
was
with
there
Freddie.
forever.
he was. And
Him
his
and Basie were the two constants forever.
forever,
Whether it
man.
was whoever was in the drum chair or the bass chair, you know, you had this cat.
Oh
Wow.
man,
He said Freddie
I
would give
know.
you an eyebrow, you know, and
Yeah, that's true. It's true. He would.
that's what you needed, man.
He,
That's all you
he
needed.
would. I can see him now.
All right, so you're also an accomplished educator. Let's talk about education. You have some people who think going to a university as a music major is a waste of time and money. Other people who think it's the best thing you can do. Tell me about the jazz education status of, you know, if you're a young man, if you're 22 and you want to go, what do you recommend? I know it depends on the person.
I recommend that first they take that walk in the woods before they make that decision and see what their heart is telling them. You know, what do you want to do? Who do you want to play with? You know, who do you want to have play with you? Figure that out. See where your heart is telling you, what your heart's telling you. Not what do I think I'm capable of and da 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 da. No. What is this telling you? And then that usually clarifies things. Okay, so if I want to play with Joe Lovano or Terrence Blanchard or Schofield or whom, you know, what does that mean? It means that you now, in following your heart, you go get every Terrence Blanchard record there is. You learn every tune he's ever done. You hear him as often as possible. You walk up to him and you say, "Hi, my name is so and so, and it's my dream to play with you. I'm learning everything you've ever done." Now, when he needs that drummer or that bass player, whatever, he's not going to go, "Who do I call?" He's going to go, "Who's that person I met in New York says they're learning everything I've ever done?" Right? And
I did this with several people. I myself did that to a few people. Are
there you
different
go.
than the way we came
There
up
you go.
because, and that's always going to keep changing. And the reality of the times we live in now are different than the way we came up
And that's all.
and that's always going to keep changing.
Yeah.
And you
But that
know,
aspect, Adam, that aspect, what you did was we were talking earlier about the whole networking. What you did also is the thing that will continue to, that's never going to change. Mark
right.
my words, that's never going to change. First
Yeah.
of all, you can't apply statistics to art. People try all the time. You hear things like, hey, man, there aren't enough jobs for all the people who are graduating. Well, you know what? Statistically, there have never been enough jobs for all the people graduating. So why are we talking about it now?
Mhm.
We're inducing this fear-based education on our kids. Because if I ask my friends, not to cut you off, Mike, if I ask my friends, man, when you and I were younger and we were going to school, were you thinking about a gig and working? No, man, I was just having fun, learning stuff. I knew something would happen. So why are we trying to scare our kids into this? We force them. Well, if you really want to make it, you better. Then now they're like, oh God, if I really want to make it,
Mhm.
come on. It's and the other thing I harp on is reminding people the doors of opportunity open for you based on the level of your art. So that's the deal. If a door of opportunity opens for somebody else, we're happy for them because we want people to be happy for us when we get a shot.
Mhm.
But the other part is you look in your personal mirror. Okay, Clayton, you didn't really know that tune. You were rushing the tempo. Whatever it is, you were scuffling on. And then that determines what I need to work on in my practice room. And the higher your level gets, so if what a lot of people say is true, how come it is, Adam, when you can't do a gig, there are a small amount of people that you can call? Small, right? You would think
Yeah.
with all the people that are out there that it would be no problem. Hey, I got 50 people I can turn you on to. It ain't that way
No.
because everybody wants something different. If I were in a room full of musicians and say, hey, what do you want to do with your music? Well, I'd like to do Broadway shows. I'd like to do a cruise ship gig. I'd like to conduct a choir. I'd like to blah, blah. A room full of people, everybody desiring different things with music in their lives. That tells
Mhm.
me no competition.
That's
Just
great.
do what you do it at the highest level. And Ray Brown is the guy who really, because I was asking the same questions that all these other young guys are asking, how am I going to make it? I'm working, I'm doing, I'm studying, blah, blah, blah. And Ray Brown said, man, don't worry about that. He said, you just learn how to play the F and bass, from the top to the bottom, then get your ass out there, make some music. Some guy in Houston is going to hear about you, and he's playing drums. Some piano player in Chicago you guys are going to find each other. And he was right. And that has not changed.
That's terrific. That's what I misstated the question. I didn't mean maybe people thought the education was worthless or a ripoff, but that they were focused on the end goal. How does this investment turn out to make a living?
So
And
yeah. So the
you
other
have
part
one other thing. You have a quote. Just take care of the music, and it will take care of you.
yeah, that's true. That's it, man. And we musicians really understand that. Kids growing up being introduced to this world may not get that. And
Mhm.
it sounds a little fairy tale-ish to them. But the three of us know how much truth there is in that, man. Just take care of the music. Let's go take it. So now, going back to your question, I didn't mean to evade the answer. Uh, um, after you've discovered in your heart what you want to do, then you got to look at the resources that are out there that will help you get what you want. So if you choose not to go, if you're a young person, you choose not to go to a university or a conservatory or whatever, that's cool. But that means that you have to be responsible for all the stuff, all that knowledge that they offer under that one roof. You have to figure out music theory. You have to figure out private lessons. You have to figure out ensembles, small and large. You have to find your peers that you're going to be rubbing elbows with. It's totally possible, but you have to be that kind of person to handle. The thing about school is, the cool thing is, all of that is offered under one roof. And there
Mhm.
you go. So those are kind of, and you can do a kind of a combination of that. Maybe you don't have to worry about a degree. Nobody's ever asked me for my degree when I get on the bandstand. Not one person. So I'm like,
But schools will ask you.
you know what? And I tell people, man, yes and no, because you don't need a degree to teach. They will tell you that you do. And it's
Yeah,
fine if you have one. You don't need one. Can you
Oh.
imagine? Hello, Mr. Ma. We would love to have you teach our, do you have a degree?
Mhm.
Hello, Mr. Hancock. We'd love, do you have a degree? Right? Now, why would they call those people and not worry about a degree? Because of the level of the music. One of the popular things amongst universities and conservatories all over the world are endowed chairs.
Hmm.
And endowed chairs have nothing to do with the paper. It's all about, oh, okay, who is this actor? Who is this musician? Who is this? Well, let's make space for them. So somebody with a lot of money says, okay, I'm going to make it possible because in order to make our Juilliard or our MSM or our Miami or our whatever look good and really be at the top of their game, we need to endow a chair so that that person comes and joins us.
It depends on the institution, of course.
It does. It does.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
frankly, Adam, if they don't get you, you don't want to teach there.
You have to be, you have to know that they want you and what you're going to bring,
That's right. That's right.
All I can do is bring my X amount of years of experience and
Expertise.
everything up until this moment of my life is something I'm bringing to the situation.
That's right. And
Yeah.
and the hip people get that.
Right.
Those
That's
who
true.
have blinders on, they don't, and that's just fine. I don't want to be working for them anyway.
That's true. Hamilton's fond of saying, let them come to you. Do what you
Yeah,
do
yeah.
and let them come to you. So,
Like
what
the
I-
music, let the
Same.
music come
Like-
to you and figure out how you're going to optimize what that is.
so what we need is an endowment for Drummer Nation. What do you think, huh? Where are you billionaires?
Anything you
$200?
say, Mike.
Well, John-
I think you do, because this is it's such a hit program you guys have.
Well, thank you.
Why
We
not
do
endow it?
It's a labor of love. Maybe somebody would. I don't know, but it's not going to change what we do. We love having great drummers and great musicians like you, and I sure appreciate your time. Anything else you want to add in before we wrap up?
Oh no, man, I'm having fun. I guess it has to end, huh?
We can do it again anytime you want.
Man, you call me anytime.
All right.
I want to
And,
hear more. Next time, though, I want to hear more of your stories.
Adam's the one with the stories.
Man,
Uh-oh.
you got stories.
I got stories.
But I just hope we get more chance where we can convene on the bandstand at some
Man,
point,
me
so I
too.
can groovelate with that beat.
Me too. Likewise, bro.
And
Absolutely.
you're one of the few bass players that I see who can pick up a bow.
Oh,
Because I
man.
remember I'd see you sometimes and I'd go, "Hey, it's Robin Hood," because he knew what to do with the bow.
John's
And,
arco playing is unbelievable.
I mean, that's
so sweet.
Thank
yeah,
you.
man. I mean,
Yeah.
that's just frosting on the cake, baby.
Appreciate it. Thank you,
Yeah,
brother.
absolutely.
Both of you guys, man. I look forward to playing with both of you guys. Mike, it would
Come
it'd
down
be
to Atlanta,
great
man.
to
If
do a big circle
There
from
you
when
go,
you were
yeah.
like, how old were you then?
Well, we must have met in 85 or something. So I was maybe 30, depending on when we met. I know. You guys have gotten older now. I haven't, but
You know what the goal is? To die young, as old as possible.
that's right.
Oh, I like that. I'm learning a lot from you.
Oh, jeez.
I
I'm
told
just
my-
stealing from everybody.
me too.
That's research if you steal from everybody.
There
If
you
you're
go.
stealing from one, it's plagiarism.
That's-
I told my mother I wanted to grow up to be a drummer. She said, well, you can do one or the other, but you can't do both. All right, gentlemen.
That's good.
John, you're welcome on the show anytime. And anytime I can hang with you, I'll be there.
well, call me anytime. I'll be there. Thank you, guys.
All right,
A
gentlemen.
pleasure to see you, man, and
Same
have this
here.
time together. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, guys.